Hello and welcome to another episode of Hometown Hauntings brought to you by Ghost City Tours. I'm your host, Stephanie, and today I am joined with a seasoned paranormal researcher who has been exploring the mysteries of the supernatural since 2017. Chris Mendace joins me with years and years of experience into the chilling and intriguing locations. And some really interesting documentaries that I can't wait to hear more about, such as Darkness in Suburbia, Demon Castle, and the Haunted Shanley Hotel. His passion and dedication to uncovering the unknown has made him a respected figure in the paranormal community. And so we look forward to hearing his insight and his curiosity about all things paranormal and what he can bring to the field. So welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. How are you guys making out today?
We are doing well. We're excited to talk to you and to hear more about what you do. And I guess really, how did you get into this and what made you get into the paranormal world?
Oh man, that's a good question. So basically when I was little, I started off as you may know, when you were younger, it was taboo to even talk about it. Like your family members never wanted to admit there was anything paranormal going on. So when I was younger, I always had these feelings of things being around me. Used to hear things. I'm originally from Puerto Rico, so when I lived in Puerto Rico, we lived in a farm, so the farm was kind of secluded from other people and different things. And there were weird things that would go on. Everybody would talk about different types of paranormal stuff going on, activity that would happen around the town, but nobody really ever wanted to admit it.
Right.
So long story short, I grew up basically just being told, that's not real, it's fake. There's always explanation for different things, and to a point there, you believe that there's different explanations. You look for those explanations itself to actually try to explain what's going on. But a lot of the things that was occurring had no explanation whatsoever. So from there on, we kind of just put it aside, and it wasn't really till right around 2017 when I started getting back into it. That I had some experience of my own after I moved here to the United States that I just couldn't explain.
Can you tell me more, what kind of experiences, what was pulling you in?
So for a while there, I was going through a little bit of a rough patch. I was off from my job for about a year. And it was to a point where I have two kids. I didn't have the kids at the house at that time. It was a time in my life where it was just more of me spending time by myself, if that makes any sense.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point where the first incident actually started making me think I was actually going nuts, to be honest with you. I was watching TV. I'm sitting there in my house just to picture it. The house is like a double wide, basically has a common living room with the kitchen attached and then a dining room and then a straight hallway that faces the living room. And the TV was faced against that wall, which it sits to the left of the hallway. So with that being said, I'm watching TV and I hear footsteps coming down the hallway. And me being used to my kids being around the house, I'm
Mm-hmm.
that's probably one of the kids getting up, not paying any mind to it. And I hear what sounds like a little girl saying, "Can I have some chips?" I looked over, I'm like, you can't have no chips. So I looked over, I'm like, oh crap, my kids aren't here. There's nobody here.
Yeah.
The house is completely empty. So it was at that point where it was huh, that was the first occurrence. That was the very first occurrence that started happening in that house. From there on, my mind started opening more to it. There was more paranormal activity. Well, now knowing that it was paranormal activity, I ended up inviting a friend of mine who was real big into the paranormal. His name is Mike. He had his own paranormal group at the time. So I invited him over to the house to do his, paranormal investigation, which at the time I was like, that's, crap. I just, in reality, I was looking for validation because at that point I was thinking I was just going nuts. So he comes over, he sets up all his equipment, cameras everywhere. We set up a common little area outside in the shed where it's just kind of like a command center where everybody's, in there just to avoid any other, external noises, anything. Just kind of control the environment at that point. So we're sitting there just within the first 20 minutes of walking into the house, he had set up 5 task cam recorders on the entire house, which was a little bit of an overkill at that time because the house wasn't that big.
Yeah.
So we were picking literally everything up going on in every room in the house. Within the first 20 minutes, all of the batteries died in the recorders. And we noticed, so we started changing the batteries out. We started in the living room, And just to picture, my refrigerator actually faced the hallway, which because it was like a common area to the kitchen. So we
Okay.
had a camera on top of that refrigerator shooting down the hallway because that's where most of the activity would happen. So we started changing the batteries out. We started off in the living room, worked to the kids' room, worked to my room to change the battery in that recorder out. Once we get to my bedroom, Mike goes in to change the batteries out. I'm still standing in the hallway holding a camera in my hand. There's a camera facing me, like facing down the hallway. I hear clear as day a woman, like a very robotic, like tunnel sounding voice saying hello. I looked over at Mike. I'm like, "Did you hear?" Like at this point, it was like your typical like ghost hunters like break to commercial
Right.
moment where it's like, I'm looking at him like, dude, like, did you hear that? Like I might have said a couple cuss words at that time. Like I'm freaking out at this point, and he just looks over at me. He's like, I didn't hear anything. Like I don't know what you're talking about. So at this point, I'm definitely thinking to myself, like, man, I'm going nuts. I'm
Right.
definitely hearing things. I'm like, I can't explain it. So I quickly went over to the living room. Thank God we had just changed that recorder, the battery to that recorder. Went to the living room, pulled the SD card out, plugged it into the computer. Clear as day, you hear the woman exactly how I explained it, saying hello, like right in the living room area. And at that point, it was just more of me being hooked to those type of activity.
Yeah.
That's where I just started. I joined this group there for a while, and then from there, I just started doing more research, kind of expanded out, and started going different places. And it's kind of where I'm at today now.
Did you ever go back and tell your family about what you experienced growing up, or like how you got back into this, or how you got?
Yeah, so my mom's obviously like very she knows very well like about everything I was experiencing when I was a kid, but from there on she didn't look at it as that. She would tell me like, don't talk about it, don't tell anybody, like this didn't happen, like just
Right.
focus on yourself basically. And yeah, I mean to this day I tell her, and she's still like a little non-believer, but there's things that she's been experiencing more and more recently that she's asked for, my opinion on certain
Yeah.
things. So it's kind of nice being able to go back and change, be able to change her mind to like, open it up a little more.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, but I mean, like I said, that's kind of what got me started, and here I am. I mean, I've done, like I said, those 3 documentaries. There should
Right.
be two more that be coming out soon, which we still don't have the names or anything. We filmed for last summer. Um, and we just came out, myself, and I don't know if you're familiar with Sean Austin. We just came out with a new app. Sean Austin's he's been on several TV shows. He's been on 28 Days Haunted, Ghost Loop, and a couple other different TV shows on the Travel Channel. But between me and him, we just came out with this new app called SPI, which
Okay.
is like a paranormal app, which is pretty cool. I'm sure you'll probably hear more about it.
Can you tell us a little bit about it?
Yeah, so the SPI app is actually more of a cutting edge technology right now that we're still experimenting with, and every day we make like different changes to it. So it basically uses it's the ability to record an EVP and taking the human ability out of it by using AI. So it has a certain frequency that is actually programmed to receive, and it's open speech technology. So there's no word bank, there's nothing in there that could basically decipher or pick from. Um, the app, the way it works, basically has the main screen. You hold the button down. As you're holding that button down, it's actually picking up your human speech, the human speech frequency. And then as you release the app, the actual frequency starts listening to like that possible EVP frequency that we've determined, like a certain frequency there that we've programmed this actually listen to, and it takes the human ear out of it. So I'm sure like if you go do a paranormal investigation, you hear one thing, somebody else hears something different, and then like it becomes a whole mess of everybody trying to fight over what they think they hear.
Yeah, it's like a crazy
This
game of telephone.
exactly.
You can't see anybody who's on the other side.
So this basically takes that away and it actually just puts it into a word on the screen. And right now we're actually working on actually getting it to translate different languages. So
Okay.
it'll be able to listen to a certain amount of different languages and be able to translate it into English based on what it listens or hears. And then the other mode, which we're actually working on, which is the SAM mode, that's basically you just press it and let it go, and it'll basically just constantly listen for EVPs and puts it on the screen itself. But it'll be able to do free speech. So it'll be able to do like sentences, full sentences, whatever it thinks it hears, it'll actually put it out. Which we've tested, and it's been pretty cool so far. But we
Yeah.
do recommend using a second device just for confirmation, because a lot of times, like I said, it's experimental, something new. Nobody really has anything like that out there.
Do you have a favorite place that you like to take this to test it out, or like to tinker with the app, or like what's your favorite like go-to spot to go and like I guess
So,
get out and play with it?
so right now we kind of just been testing it anywhere we go.
Okay.
This last place we tested it, which we got some really cool results, was actually called the House in Between. I think there's like 2 documentaries out on it. It's in Mississippi. It's a pretty interesting house, and the results that we got with the app kind of go hand in hand with what's going on with the house. And it was interesting. I think Sean might actually have. I think Sean might be coming to your doing an interview with you
I think
one of these
he's on
days.
our list. Yeah. Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm sure he'll have a video that he can provide you with that, which was pretty interesting. We had curtains moving and talked about the curtains, talked about the windows. There was a lot of things that happened that just kind of corresponded with the actual activity that was going on in the house, which
Yeah.
was interesting.
I'd be curious to see like if you took it someplace more common, like if something, you know, like sometimes you go somewhere and you're like, oh, if these walls could talk. And
Oh yeah,
like,
so
yeah, like now we can hear the walls talking.
yeah, so one of the places I'm looking forward to actually trying to keep testing it is actually a place here near where I live. It's a tattoo shop. It's considered the uh, America's most haunted tattoo shop. It's called
Okay.
the Convent Tattoo. I think it was in a couple episodes of Ghost Hunters. The
Okay.
owner there, Sophia, she's pretty cool. She's allowed me to go there whenever I kind of want. I just got to let her know, and as long as nobody's there, she lets you go there. But she has hundreds and hundreds of dolls that are all like supposedly possessed that people just keep sending to her. So it's definitely an interesting location and a cool spot, definitely for sure to go
Yeah.
back and continue to investigate.
Yeah. Could you walk us through a typical process that you like the step by step kind of how you pick somewhere to go do a paranormal investigation? Like how do you find the places and then what are you doing to prepare and set up? All of that. Can you walk us through that?
Sure. So, like, I mean, for right now, I've been just kind of going with the flow. So, a lot of people just reach out and they tend to go to different locations and they invite me to go with them. So, a lot of times, like a lot of these locations that I continue to go to, I don't really like knowing the history. I don't like knowing anything about the location prior to going there. I usually do a research or have somebody else that knows the research, like during the investigation itself,
Mhm.
only because I don't want that to kind of interfere with your thoughts, your mind. While you're trying to do the investigation, you're focusing on one thing instead of actually focusing on the bigger picture of what's really going on in that location. Step by step, just basically, I just walk in. I like doing a walkthrough first, just kind of feeling the location and seeing exactly like what it may feel like, what there might be. I don't have any abilities, but I think just because of doing this so much, like I've opened more to it. So there's a
Mhm.
lot of different things that I can pick up that I've been picking up that are actually like corresponding or actually coming through with the actual location itself, as far as the history wise and some of the activity that actually goes on in the location itself. Um, but other than that, we just go with the flow. We go in there, start investigating, be respectful. I never try to overstep anybody's boundary. I look at it this way. So if you're, let's say you're going to like a stranger's house,
Mhm.
and you just walk in and you start acting like you own the place and you start disrespecting whatever's there, you're never going to get any good activity. You're never going to get anything good out of it. Um, so I've always just taken it respectfully and walk through and ask for permission before I even go in.
Do you have different crew, like different kind of support crew, or how does that work?
I basically do everything by myself at this point, but I do have a lot of friends that are actually into the paranormal that actually invite me to go places. I've been mainly doing a lot of investigations with Sean. So we've kind of been traveling all over the place, just doing different investigations at different locations, just throughout here, like the United States, which has been pretty cool. And just the ability to actually go investigate locations that like you wouldn't have access to as the regular general public,
Right.
locations that have like a lot of histories that are over 200 years old. Like that's to me like the actual winning points of just doing the investigations besides doing the paranormal. And
Mhm.
that's another thing too. A lot of people always talk about doing paranormal investigations. They talk about how they're always getting all these sort of activity. But the truth of the matter is, like, when you go to these locations, there's times where you might not even get any activity. You might not get anything. You might spend 6 hours there and have nothing but crickets in the background. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But that's another thing that I found out. I wouldn't say the hard way, but like just by doing the investigations themselves, you know.
Yeah, I have so many questions. I just keep like, I want to know all these different things. One of them is, do you have a place that you want to go really badly and you just can't like logistically get there, or you can't like for whatever reason you can't just like get there right now? Like, is there some place that you're really interested in going to check out?
Yes, there's actually two locations like that that are like my top bucket list locations. The one is Alcatraz. I've always wanted to go
Okay.
there and spend the night. And then the other location is the Winchester Mansion. I
Okay.
hear all sorts of crazy stuff going on. I don't know, are you familiar with the Winchester
I'm
Mansion at
not.
all?
Can you tell me about it?
Yeah, so the Winchester Mansion is actually it belonged to the owners of the Winchester rifle. So
Okay.
basically, the wife, the husband passed away, who was the main creator of the rifles. The wife started doing these automatic writings and basically getting all sorts of different spiritual communications from what she believed. And every automatic writing drawings that she did, she believed them to be a location of where like a soul was actually killed with the rifles. So she continued to build onto this house every single day while she still lived. So this house is literally built with different types of rooms of
Hmm.
where she believed these spirits were killed by the Winchester rifles. And it's just a massive maze. I can't remember exactly how many rooms, but it's just a massive mansion that was just built upon like her entire life while she still lives. She constantly had construction crews working. There's steps that lead nowhere. There's doors that open from the second floor to lead straight down to the ground. It's just a massive maze.
Yeah.
It's just interesting just to think about that mindset, especially around that time frame. You know what it's similar to what some of the people do now with the automatic ratings.
Hmm.
Um, and it's just interesting just to think back in time, like people were actually in tune with that. And once again, it was probably looked upon for them to actually do that. It's pretty intense, pretty crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever finished an investigation and been like, what? Like what was like what was that? Kind of like what did I just go through kind of moment?
Yeah, actually, there was one. I want to go back to the Greenville Manor. That location was just from the minute we walked into the minute we left. It was just full of just trying to figure out like what the hell was going on in there,
Hmm.
like
Hmm.
what was happening. Um, the the main thing, like there was a couple different things like that happened there that till this day I still have no explanation for. We started hearing footsteps on the second floor of the location. It was almost sounded like people running up the steps and coming back down.
Hmm.
So we go up to the second floor and we're sitting in this room where it was almost like those old school style of beds that have the bed post
Oh, the
inside.
canopy bed. Hmm.
Yes, yeah. So there was one there that's like all like built and everything, and Sean had previously talked about prior to going there that like the image in his third eye where he had seen this bed, like, and it's I think he said it, and it's his dream. It came up, and there was somebody like sitting there shaking the bed, and the screws coming off. Well, as he's talking about that, one of the screws actually comes off the bed, and then out of nowhere, we just hear this massive like growl coming right from the steps outside of the door of the room, like
Yeah.
clear as day. Like it was audibly like we had no explanation for it whatsoever. Prior to that, the owner was showing us pictures, and that we're talking about that. The light just turned off. It's brand new battery. I just put a battery on there. Swap
This isn't
batteries.
weird. This is normal.
No, not at all.
All a normal day here.
Luckily, I got extra batteries here just in case. So, um, yeah. Long story short, the owner ended up showing us a video prior to us getting there of the room in that same floor, which they called the war room because it sits on the second story of the property,
Okay.
and it's glass. It's right in the corner, so it's all windows, and it has a whole bunch of curtains. They kind of go in an L shape. As soon as you come in the door, it goes in an L shape, and then it has a second door that actually leads to a balcony outside of the property. So the video he showed us was, I think he said it was probably like a day before we got there. The actual door opens up, the outside door coming into that room opens up that leads to the balcony. And it looks like somebody walks past all the curtains with their hands, like just pushing all the curtains. All the curtains are actually moving as they walk around the entire L shape of, where the
Yeah.
curtains were at.
Yeah.
And that was kind of in the same area where we heard this loud growl, which we couldn't explain, which was interesting. I'll give you another one too. Another location was Penhurst Asylum. We were doing an investigation there. We heard audibly what sounded like little kids. Like I don't know. You ever heard of like like even in movies, like kids with like tin cans, like going around a fence, and
Mhm. Mhm.
so we ended up hearing that. It sounded like the tin can being rubbed on a fence, like near the steps. So we go running towards the steps to see like what what that noise was. And that day it had rained, and there was water in the basement of that specific building we were at. There's about maybe like an inch of water. So as soon as we go running to the steps, we see like there's a mesh in between the steps that actually like blocks people from jumping over the steps. So it's
Okay.
almost like a mesh fence in a
Yeah.
way. And as we're looking down, we see little kids' footprints on the floor. And we didn't have any kids with us at that time. So it's legitimate, like wet, barefoot footprints coming up the steps, what sounded like from what we heard it from.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I still have the pictures. I might be able to send you the pictures of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I mean, I put my feet next to it just to show the size comparison. Come to find out, that was another thing. It's another reason why I don't like knowing anything about the location.
Mhm.
Um, at the time, I didn't know that specific building held children. Um, like while Penhurst was still open, which once again, I didn't know anything about that. And just
Mhm.
having that experience to just be able to talk about it and then being able to match it with the actual ability of kids being there back in the day was neat, like interesting.
Yeah. Why are kids so creepy? Like,
Yeah.
like, why? Like, I'm okay. Like, if I hear like a weird voice, I'm like, oh, okay, whatever. But you hear a kid voice and you're like, wait, what? Like,
Yeah, it scares you.
well, they're not supposed to be in that space. And I always think like a couple weeks ago, I heard something like early in the morning, definitely sounded like a kid laughing. My kids were all asleep. There are no other noises. I had heard something else like later on that morning. So I was like, well, something is here in the house with me today. But it was kids. And I was like, I'm fine with the weird humming. Great. That's fine. But the kid laughing at like 4 a.m. and no, that's not okay.
What's the first thought that you think of as soon as you hear that?
Usually it's like, who is that? And then I was like, nope, that's not my kid. Like,
I,
like when I heard like the weird humming later in the morning, my dog was acting weird, which I heard him kind of doing like a weird like kind of in the bed, and I was in the bathroom getting dressed, and like I go open the door thinking my husband's messing with him, and my husband is snoring asleep. And I'm like, go to bed, you know. And then I hear this humming in the bathroom. And I'm like, that's weird. Like, what is this humming? Thinking again, it's my husband. It's not. um Kind of brushed it off, like went, did my like rest of the morning, came to work, and I was like, yeah, I heard this weird like humming, and someone started humming, and they're like, did it sound like this? And I was like, yep. That was it. It was the office ghost that we always joke about, that like messes with the stuff in the office. So um
that's funny.
I'm always like, what, like why, like why today, like why on a Tuesday is this happening on a
Yeah.
Tuesday
Why?
morning?
Why is it always like when it's dark out? It's never when it's
Yeah,
just
why
light.
is it always in dark? My other question that I had is, do you ever feel like you need to like physically like brush yourself off or like dust off, like when you leave someplace? Do you ever get that like sensation that you need to like take a broom to your body?
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. So like anytime I leave a location, even when I get like back to the hotel room or the house or whatever, I always like, and this is gonna sound funny. Anytime I go to like a location, I take a shower. When I
Mhm.
get back from the location, I take another shower. It's just a constant thing that I do. I don't know why, I just do it, but it just makes you feel like you're brushing the stuff that
Yeah,
you were
yeah.
dealing with off.
Gotta wash it off.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I'll tell you some funny ones. There's been time where I've been on an investigation and just completely fell asleep just from being drained from like everything that's going on there. And
Hmm.
and Sean actually jokes about that. Um, Greenville Manor, we're sitting there, same thing right before the growl happened. I was getting drained. I looked at him like, dude, I'm about to like tap out here soon. Like just probably go outside, take a breather, like just walk
Yeah.
around. And as I'm telling him that, I'm standing there with the camera and I literally fall asleep standing up. He's like, dude, I've never seen anybody do that, fall asleep standing up. It's like, it happened. I did it. It was definitely me. I'll
Right.
take ownership. But yeah, I mean, it's definitely that weird feeling where you have to brush everything off. Like that's just my normal ritual thing that I do. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah. Do you go back and do like kind of debriefing after an investigation where you kind of like pick it apart and dissect things?
So back when I was doing residentials, actually, we used to set up like cameras all over the place and actually
Mhm.
dissect the entire investigation. Like we would sit there for hours and hours and hours, just listening to the same thing over and over again, trying to see if there was different camera angles, trying to see if we can like actually say confidently that it was something that could not be explained.
Mhm.
So there's a lot of good evidence that we've gotten in the past, especially when I was working with Mike. There's a lot of evidence that we've gotten in the past where it's awesome evidence, but just the possibility of an explanation being there, we've thrown it out. We've never used it. But yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, there's different locations that I used to go to, like especially when I was doing like a lot of research into the paranormal, that I would just dissect like left and right, just trying to figure it out, like just to make sure that there's simply no possible common explanation for it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I mean, I've done that.
Yeah, yeah. Do you feel like some places are just naturally more haunted, whether it's like parts of the country or old historical or different places like that? Like, what do you think makes, or does something make it more haunted than any other place?
Well, I mean, my thought into the possibility of everything being haunted is just the emotions that actually went with those locations.
Hmm.
Um, for instance, if you think about like a lot of the things that people tend to see is always somebody walking through a wall or whatever the case may be. If you go back and you look at that location, maybe like different time frame, different era, like you
Hmm.
might be able to see that at that time, like there was a door there. The layout of the house might have changed. There might
Right.
have been different things. So I feel like that those emotions of something that you cared for so much, or something that you were really into, or that you worked yourself up to having, such as a house or a property or a location, do carry a lot of emotions. I think those emotions are actually what causes some of the activity. More of a, the maybe like a loop or a time loop, where your spirit is continually to just live through that moment, or maybe a happy moment, maybe a sad moment, maybe a horrible moment of your life.
Hmm.
But I do feel that there's certain locations that carry more emotions than others. So there's that possibility of it being more haunted than some other locations.
Hmm. Do you
Um,
ever have deja vu moments when you're doing things like, wait, I've been here before, or like I walked through this door, or I felt this before? Do you ever have moments like that?
yeah, deja vu is like a constant thing that happens. There was Waverly, never been to Waverly before. And
Mm-mm.
there was certain times where the first time and only time I've ever investigated it, that I felt I was in that room prior. Or certain different types of room that we entered, that I felt and had visions of it being there before, and a lot of times like deja vu moments, or maybe even like dreams that I had. But like I said, I've never been there before, so there shouldn't be no explanation of how I know, like, the different layout or different location of a property without even being there.
Yeah.
And while we were investigating that, there's definitely multiple times where I was like, oh, I've been here before. Huh, I definitely saw that happening prior, like, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? But you can't explain it. It's
Right.
deja vu.
Yeah. It's that weird, like, oh, I know what they're going to say, but then you can't, like, you've heard it before. But my thing is always, I'm like, oh, I know what they're going to say, but I don't know what they're going to say, but I know what they're going to say.
Right.
Like, you've been there. I've lived this moment. I've been here already, like been there, done that. Let's get to the next one. That's kind of always like I am when I'm standing there. I'm like, I've been here before.
Yeah. So it also plays back into, I don't know if you ever heard of the Albert Einstein theory. It's the unified field theory. So the unified field theory with Albert Einstein. Have you heard of that
I
before?
haven't. Can you tell me about it?
Yeah. So the unified field theory basically is one of Albert Einstein's like biggest mystery, where a lot of people think he might have been able to find a way of actually going into that unified field theory of what he was talking
Mm.
about. And a lot of people think that it was just as big as mystery that he just never got to finish. Basically, what it covers is if you can control space, you can control time, and if you can control time, you can control space. Meaning that you're able to actually time travel and travel in between different times, either while you're living or on the spiritual side. So there's been a lot of paranormal researchers when I was researching this actual theory, that I've looked into, that have actually tried to communicate with spirits, talking about uh, the actual time frame where they're currently in.
Hmm.
So a lot of times what some of the theories out there is that basically a spirit is actually just a spirit just traveling through time.
Mhm.
So we might be like entering that different dimension of where you're actually talking to a different time frame or different time of the person that's currently living. I think Kalani was one of the guys that actually had an experience where he talked about some of the activity that he had, basically communicating with a spirit and actually being able to communicate with somebody that was in the future, to where he was actually able to make a connection with in the past, which was interesting. But that's just that theory that's out there. I've always like researched that theory. That theory plays into a lot of different paranormal happenings, like the Philadelphia experiment. They
Mhm.
talked about the Philadelphia experiment before, and the Philadelphia experiment was actually based on that Albert Einstein theory, which was the unified field theory, which is interesting, and it's something I think that the military has looked into. But obviously, you can't really confirm it, but it's
Right.
definitely something that's been tried and maybe failed, maybe not failed. Like, but
Yeah.
it's just a mystery, but it's interesting.
Is there a certain time period you would or event that you would want to go back to if you could and be able to maybe to answer some of your big questions or that you would like to explore more?
Honestly, I've thought about this before, and
Mhm.
I feel like I'm an old soul. Like I
Mhm.
definitely like back when like the 20s, like that
Mhm.
20 time frame era. I feel like I'm like attracted to that era, like everything from that era. Like I feel like I've lived there at a certain point. I feel that there's been definitely different things that I know from that era that obviously I wouldn't know because I've never lived in it.
Mhm.
But it's I would say probably the 20s is usually that time frame where I would like to go back to and see exactly, like, maybe was I there in a past life, you know what I mean, like is there anything that happened. But I'm more attracted to just that time frame and like everything about it, like just the way people dress, like, it's back when men were men, basically.
Right. Would you want to live it or would you want to see it as like kind of like a bird's eye view of it, or would you want to be living in those moments?
I feel like I would want to be living in those moments. I wouldn't say necessarily. I would say visit too, but mainly like live in it. Like I feel like I live there. Like that's kind of like where I'm stuck to.
Mhm.
How
Yeah.
about you? Is that something like?
I kind of joke about this because there's like big questions that I have and like really big questions that I need to ask somebody someday that no one here can answer. But like what lately, like we joke about the pyramids and I'm like, well, now I just want to go back to the beginning. I want to see what it was like before, where they built top to bottom, bottom top. Like, did we was there another life form that was here before us that built this? Like, I want to come back and give everyone the answers on the pyramids. It's kind of like my let me just solve this question once and for all. I'll
Right.
answer on the pyramids. Otherwise, like I think when I go, I don't know, because then they're like, well, would I go back in time or would I want to go forward in time and see things to come back then with better like introspective of where we are now? Um, I don't have an answer. So, I mean, wherever you put me, I'm good, I guess, except I would like to have the pyramid question answered.
Yeah.
Uh,
How we built was.
so then
Yeah,
I can just like stop all the theories on the pyramids and I'll be like, "Well, actually, let me tell you how it happened."
that's funny. I would go back and I would go forward and get some winning lottery number tickets and come back.
Back, yeah, just
Yeah.
things a little bit. Yeah, that's funny. Um,
Do you feel like you lived in a certain time frame prior to that or no?
I don't. I don't feel like I am ever really called to another time frame. I definitely have interests in like certain times. Like I really enjoy World War II history, and I don't know if it's like that personal connection with my grandparents or anything like that, or if it's just like a general interest. Um, I don't feel like I have like a specific time. I just have a lot of questions about things. Like I wonder if people just weren't like as smart as they are now back then, and that's why it took them so long to get to where we are. Kind like that's what I kind of wonder. Um, More on that side of things.
That's interesting you mentioned that because I've thought of the opposite. I think we've like regressed in time. And it all goes back to the pyramids. Like if you think about it, how can they build something that long ago where we still don't have the answer to till this day?
I don't know. And that's why I want to go, like, take me to the beginning of that, please. And like, let me be the one to have the answer. Cause I'm sure it'd be a lot of fun at parties and like I could do lectures and all this really fun thing, like
Yeah,
had that knowledge. And then I could like, let me hear your theories. And like, actually, you're wrong. And I think like that would be a fun thing to kind of go back and see how it happened.
right.
There's so many things that I joke about dinosaurs. Like, did God make dinosaurs? And he's like, oh, I could do better. And then like wipe them out, like
Yeah,
that kind of thing. And then like put humans on Earth or whatever. Like that's the kind of stuff I joke about, but I really I don't need definitive answers on things, or I need like a definitive, like, this is how things happen. But I more like want to see, for the sake of good conversation, like, tell me how the pyramids were built. And then I want to go back and see them, like being built. I want to know the
right.
secrets of them. Yeah, I don't know if we're like living backwards in time or like where we are in all time and space. Like those are some big questions that I have.
All right, now let me flip the script.
Okay.
What if there was extraterrestrials that actually helped build the pyramids?
Yeah, I mean, I would totally be on board with that.
Yeah,
Hopefully on board with them because I feel like they might have an upper hand right now. So, I mean, like, anything's possible. I really maybe it was some kind of force that we don't know about. I mean, it's definitely become more of a mainstream thing to talk about. Like, I think about 10 years ago when I joked about aliens, people are like, okay. And then,
right.
you talk about them now, like, oh yeah, like let's talk about this more.
I saw one last week. Like
Right, right. But the same thing with paranormal stuff. Like, I remember it had to be about 15 years ago. I swear I saw something like early morning. I was out running and I was like, am I delusional? Am I sleeping? It was kind of like a weird, like, what did I see? Kind of like vision kind of thing going on.
right,
And I was just like, oh, I'm gonna keep running because I don't know what's going on here. And I never once saw it again. And so I'm like, what on earth would have popped into my head to create this vision at this particular moment in time? Or did I really see something?
right,
Kind of thing. And then I'm always like, well, maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I'm, like imagining things or pulling weird things out. Maybe I am truly delusional because it's early morning and I'm running and who knows like what I was reading the night before, kind of thing. So I'm always like,
always look for that logical explanation, and then
yeah,
you
yeah.
never think of like, man, but that was pretty cool what I just saw. But what was it? Like I had an experience like that actually where I live now. I was leaving for work like 4:30 in the morning, and we live right by the Delaware River. So
Okay.
we have like two streets behind my house is the actual river itself. I'm leaving to go to work. I'm driving down the road. It's dark outside, like 4:30 in the morning, and there's like 3 or 4 street lights that leads on the road that actually leads to the river. So like you can at the end of that road, you can actually there's a little beach area that you can go in. And I literally saw what looked like a person walking in the middle of the road, all drenched in the water. Looked like he'd just gotten out of the water. It was cold, cold, very cold outside.
Yeah.
Looked away and then looked again and it was gone. I'm like, I don't know what I just saw, but I didn't see it. I'm gonna keep driving. But same thing,
Yeah.
did I really see like what I think I saw, or was it just
Right.
like your imagination playing tricks on you?
No, like, I mean, no joke. This had to be a good year ago. I was running with my friend and there was I thought it was a plane like coming straight on and didn't really think anything of it. We came around another loop and it's still there. And I was like, that plane has not moved in 15 minutes. My friend's like, no, I think you're just imagining things. And I was like, no, it hasn't moved. And then as we're coming back around again, like 15 minutes later, here it comes, just zooming past us. And she's like, oh, it must have been just so far away. I'm like a half hour out. I'm like, there's no way we could see that. There's no way that's possible. So
Yeah,
now I'm like, oh, I like with all this drone stuff, I'm like, well, then it had to be a drone. Like it had to just be parked up there.
yeah,
And we
just
happened
hanging.
to catch, yeah, we just happened to catch it.
Yeah,
But it's one of those things that like a year ago, I'm sure she thought I was crazy. But if I would have said that now, she'd be like, oh yeah, it probably is. And then brush it off as nothing. So
right.
yeah, I do enjoy like the mainstreamness of all of this now and that it has become
The new
like,
norm.
yeah, like a new norm and something that people are interested in. I think it's unlocked a different level of thinking for people that they haven't thought about, or different dimensions more that people just have never considered.
Yeah, and I also think that it has a lot to do with how it's been brought out throughout the years. Like it's
Mhm.
been slowly leaked to like certain levels. I mean, if you paid attention to it, it's been like, oh, we might have seen something here. No, we didn't see that. And, okay, we think we saw this here. We think we saw that there. And they just kind of slowly released it up onto the point where we're
Yeah,
at now. Now they're actually openly admitting it, like,
right,
during like Congress hearings and stuff like that.
right.
So
Yeah, I mean, 22 years ago, 23 years ago, it was like, oh no, this is too classified for anyone to see. Now they're like, here, look at everything we have that you can read.
yeah,
Uh,
we have some of our own. Like,
right, right. So I do think that's fun, and like it's not a scary thing by any means, but it's just more of like a curiosity, and like I just think, like I really hope it's just a lot more peaceful than like Men in Black was. Um, and that we have like a shared like peace between us when our worlds do
yeah.
collide.
So I'll tell you a funny story with that. Like you're talking about that topic. Like when I was growing up in Puerto Rico, I was like UFOs were, they still are like really, really like huge in Puerto Rico.
Mhm,
Like it's so big to the point where they have their own like alien or UFO like airport they call it. So back when I was growing up, like early '90s,
wait, I just have to
uh,
know, where's this airport?
I can look it up. Actually, give me a second.
What part of
Let me
Puerto Rico?
look this up. So they definitely have a, it's called a UFO airport in Puerto Rico. I think it's let me see, UFO airport. Actually, it's the Aguadilla airport, which is like 20 minutes from where I live. Where actually my dad still lives there.
Okay,
So they call that the UFO airport
okay.
because of all the UFO activity they've had, all the UFO. Like so, going back to the story real quick. Like there was I, it was like early '90s. There was a video that was released in like the news media in Puerto Rico. So
Mhm,
like the news in Puerto Rico and the news here are completely different.
mhm,
Like they
mhm,
show you literally everything, even like if there's homicides, anything like that on, that's happening in the area, like they will actually show you like the bodies. They will show you like
mhm,
everything. Like there's no censoring, there's no nothing. So one of the things that they talked about is like they had this big research center in what's called Arecibo, like Puerto Rico. It's like it's a big old telescope, massive. It's destroyed now. It's actually been on a couple movies. I think James Bond was one of the movies it was in. They somehow made a communication with like some sort of UFO craft that was in the area, and they were talking to it, and apparently it spoke like the like Spanish like language,
mhm.
and it was able to communicate and say that they were only there for water. They didn't want to hurt anybody, and that their source was water, and that's what they wanted. And that's the only reason why they were visiting like Earth. And that was something that was released like back in the '90s. I remember mom talking about it. I remember everybody talking about it. It was like a big deal. Like it was released all over the place, and it was like just the wavelength of
Mhm.
the communication that we're currently having. I've tried to research that video. I've tried to look for that video like for maybe over 10 years now, and I cannot find it anywhere. So
It's
it's
scrubbed.
yeah, it's completely gone. So like the only people that really know about it are people that actually were around in that area, like that, they're still, like that were able to listen to that. I mean, I'm talking like the '90s, like it's 50 years ago, but it's not
Right.
like it's not that long ago. But there's no evidence of that video ever even being out or anything like that. But it was definitely like played all over like the media, like it was played all over the place, which was pretty cool. I mean, I
Yeah.
think
It's like a Mandela effect.
yes, yeah,
It was there and now it's not. And
right.
it's exactly
Some
what it
people remember it, some people don't. Like,
right. Yeah, that
yeah.
is. Where do you see the future of paranormal research going? Do you see this as being something there's going to be a lot of new developments, or do you think they're just going to keep working on what they have, or where do you see this headed?
Honestly, I wouldn't even know where to answer that, only because there's a lot of people in this field that are just solely based on themselves.
Hmm.
And I feel like there's no like working together. Everybody talks about working together and doing this stuff together and doing this. No, everybody's really just out to do one thing. They just want to put themselves out there and just kind of make a name for themselves just based on, the paranormal field.
Hmm.
Um, Whereas I think if we were able to kind of like share some of the information of the things that we've learned throughout, the investigations and things like that, I see it, actually learning and being able to figure out a way to effectively communicate with, the
Mhm.
spirits. But as of right now, like everybody's so divided and everybody's talking about, like the way you do it is wrong. The way this person does it is wrong. There's really no right or wrong way of doing it. Like whatever works for you, whatever way you think, or whatever way you think you're having a communication or you're communicating, that's the way that works for you. It's going to
Right.
work differently for everybody, especially when you're dealing with, spirits and you're dealing with different kind of things, that we have no explanation for.
Right. Do you think it's just something that's kind of like a delicate area that people are afraid of being proved so wrong in that that's why they don't want to collaborate?
No, I think it's more of like personal egos, to be honest with you. I think that the ego is a big thing in the place. And I see it a lot in this field. I see it a lot in the other field that I'm in too.
Mhm.
I think like as long as like we put our egos aside and just work together, I think there'd be a lot of progress.
Yeah.
There would be a lot of knowledge that could be gained from some of these people and ourselves. Like um, whoever really investigates has knowledge. They have some sort of knowledge, especially like they wouldn't be making any communications. They wouldn't be getting anything if if their theory or their way of doing it didn't work.
Hmm.
So I do feel like as long as everybody comes together and they work together, I think that there's a lot of progress that could be made. Especially when you're focusing on just doing research and like taking readings of what's going on at the time that happens. Trying to figure out like the environment first prior to actually figuring out like the communication method.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of progress to be made, but I mean, I think it could be made, and there could be a lot of things that we can learn, at least from one another.
Yeah. If you could go back to 2017, Chris, what would you tell them about your like research and investigations and like what would you tell 2017 Chris?
Honestly, like the biggest mistake I made was actually like doing research of the properties going into it. I'd say
Mhm.
just don't do any research. Like just go straight through and try to figure out what's going on there. Just being respectful, like from day
Mhm.
one. Like when I first started like investigating, I was getting a little rude with the stuff that was going on there, and you would get a reaction out of it, but it wouldn't be like positive reaction. Like you would get actual stuff like being moved, thrown at you, like stuff like that. And
Mhm.
I learned that just being respectful and actually just communicating with what's there as a regular human spirit, like you would be able to get a better response and be able to make that connection better.
Yeah. How do you think paranormal research and what you do impacts your understanding of life and death and the whole human experience and the circle of life and like not things on or not beings on this earth?
Honestly, like based on like the research that I've done, like I said, I mean I've known this since 2017. I have more questions than answers. Like
Mhm.
it seems like the more you learn from it, the more questions build from it.
Mhm.
Um, so I'd say like just trying to find a way to actually just fully like getting an answer of what it is that's really out there. Because I mean, at this point, we don't really know if it's we're actually like dealing with human spirits, and we're dealing with other spirits, and we're dealing with things from out of dimension, out of this world. Like
Mhm.
we still don't have any of those answers. It's just basically based on not knowing.
Right. Yeah.
The unknown factor is really big into this. So yeah, I mean that's a good question. I mean I never really thought of them much.
I'm always just like, I have so many questions and like nobody can answer. Like
Right.
nobody here can answer my questions. Like I know that for sure.
Yeah.
I get all the opinions and read all the backings and research and with theories and everything I want. But I have questions that need answers someday. Not now, like I'm good where I'm at right now. I'll just keep my notebook, but like make sure it's buried with me, please, so I can take it with me. But yeah, there's just I think a lot of different the more you dig into it, the more you're like, oh, why is this or why is that? Or I want to know more about this and how we can get to the next step. Or yeah, I think it definitely just opens doors on the whole like life experience and where we are in this present time
Right.
to everything else. So what do you think is the biggest misconception people have about what you do? And how do you correct that? Or how do you change their mind about what
Listen, every time I tell my friends I do paranormal investigations, they automatically go to the Ghostbusters theme songs and the Ghostbusters.
yeah,
That's like their first thought. They're like, "You do what?"
that
Like
is your ringtone.
that's their first thought. So that's the first misconception. Like a lot of people don't realize that when you do like paranormal investigation, you actually sit in a room by yourself for however many hours and talk to absolutely nothing. So it's definitely not as exciting and as crazy as people make it seem like. You know what I mean? Like you're not out there with a proton pack trying to get ghosts and stuff like that. It's
Right.
more of just the common understanding and trying to see if you can get any responses. But that's the main misconception I get. Like
Yeah, I mean, you
from
think about like an episode of any kind of a ghost hunting show, you get maybe 30 to 60 minutes max of a show, like one episode. That might have been like 3 days worth of filming to get
I,
just that cut
yeah,
down to 30 minutes or 60 minutes, whatever it would be.
I know a lot of different types of paranormal like TV shows. Yeah, they go out there and they spend maybe 3 to 4 days, maybe even a week,
Yeah.
trying to get different activity or different like cool things to happen just so that they can use it within that 30 to 60 minute episode. But yeah, I mean, I've honestly been pretty lucky with certain investigations we've done too. I haven't had too many that have been just a straight bust. I mean,
Hmm.
they've been there, but it has happened, but it hasn't been many. Like we've had some pretty good activity, especially like when me, Sean, and Eric usually get together. I don't know what it is, but like I guess all three of our energies is completely different.
Hmm.
And I think somehow that plays into it. Like what I've noticed is when you have fun and when you have fun doing it and you're putting out good vibes, you're actually going to get a lot of communication.
Hmm.
Now, if you're stressing, yelling at people, like like just not having a good day, like just don't
Right.
investigate. Like you're just going to throw the whole vibe off. You're going to throw the whole
Yeah.
like atmosphere off, and you're just going to get negative things coming through.
Do you
But
have any experiences that you're like, "Oh, I did not need to go through that."
yeah, so the documentary we did for Demon Castle, that experience there was pretty wild itself, and whatever Sean actually expelled from that place is still like it still follows us around to this day.
Hmm.
Like I mean, there's different places that we go to and it comes through, like on EVP, spirit boxes, like talking about itself as the
Hmm.
serpent, because the actual entity that was there, it referred to itself as a serpent. So it's like definitely a demonic entity that was there, and it's insane. Like just knowing that you dealt with that actual property, you dealt with that actual spirit that was there, which it's obviously not a good spirit, and just knowing that it still follows you around to this day, like trying to mess with you, it's
Yeah.
insane. Like you try to get away from it, you try to get it to go away, but it just constantly comes through like any locations we're at, like which is pretty wild, and we always get reference to
Kind of a weird, kind of a weird spot to be in. You're like, go away, but I don't know where you should go. So
right.
if we could just end things here.
It's like a bad breakup. It just doesn't go away.
Yeah, there's really no defining moment that like you can turn and walk away from. Uh,
Try to block the number, they hit you up with a different fake account. Like
exactly what I'm envisioning here. uh, what do you have coming up next? What's exciting you for this next year, or what do you have that's like big things coming out?
so, our main thing right now is working on this app and getting. I mean,
Mhm.
the app's already released, so you can look it up. It's just in the Apple App Store. It's called Spirit Phone Innovations, Spy for short. Our main focus is just to get that completely like the updates coming out soon, within hopefully the next couple weeks. Well, it's just focusing on the app and actually getting the app to actually make sure that people are actually getting what they're paying for and getting. Um, like we said with the app, like we've always recommend using a second device, like a
Mhm.
spirit box, maybe even a recorder, to try to see if you can like validate some of the responses that are coming through. Um, but right now, the focus is mainly the app and just doing investigation in different locations, just promoting and pushing the app and testing the app out, and just making sure that everybody's getting what they deserve and what we're actually trying to put out. So
Very cool. I'm gonna have to check that out when I'm done here. Sounds like a fun thing to like not mess around with, but definitely to try out in the right kind of place. Um, so I'd like to do a couple questions of some rapid fire and kind of get your opinion on things. So the first one, ghosts or aliens, who's most likely to visit us first if they haven't already? Um, who do you think will see like a full on vision from first, ghosts or aliens?
honestly, I've always thought about this, and I would have to say that it's somehow all connected in a way. Like think about it. Like think about the ghosts. Think about aliens. Like
Mhm.
you see them for a brief second, they're gone. You
Mhm.
see spirits for a brief second, they're gone. How do we know? How do we not know it's all part of one thing. I mean, even think about, like the Bigfoot sightings when everybody talks about Bigfoot.
You
How,
took the next question, Chris. That was my next one.
how do we know that that's not maybe a spirit of like, a person that was there back in the day and it's just showing itself and just disappearing?
Right.
To me, it's all like somehow like one big like circle. Like I think it's all connected. I think there's the possibility of, like I've talked earlier, like traveling through different dimensions, and these different dimensions coming all together and coming into one place at the same time is where we make these connections, where we see these spirits that may be, spirits of somebody else here, like, or is currently here just living in a different dimension, or maybe we're the goose. Like maybe we're the ones like, traveling and
right.
I've put so much thought into this. Like I haven't even, it's just can go in so many different directions. You can fall in this big rabbit hole just trying to think about the same thing over and over again. But like, think about it. Like if Bigfoot, what's the main report that people see? They see him for a brief second,
Yeah.
and then he's
gone.
Then he's gone.
He's the hide and seek world champion.
He is. He definitely is.
The whole thing with that is like every time people see things, whether it's like the Kraken, the Loch Ness monster, fairies, elves, any of that kind of stuff, right? It can be across all time, different continents, everything. It's all drawn the same way. It's all the same way. Like people in the 1900s were not communicating with people in, like the 1600s on how to draw this stuff.
Right.
And yeah, it's all drawn the same way.
The same concept, the same idea, like very similar, like
same, like similar traits or characteristics or behaviors. Like there's got to be some truth to it. That's always my big question is like, and then like, where do you draw the line on different things like forest elves, Santa's elves?
So I'll tell you a funny story. I've always drawn the line at fairies. Like,
okay,
that's it. That can't be real. That's got to be like nuts. But actually, you're probably the first person. Actually, one of the first person I'm openly talking about this.
I'm glad we're here together.
We were. I did an investigation. I want to say it was probably June of last year. Once again, it was the tattoo shop I was telling you about. It was the common tattoo shop. We're sitting. Me and my friend are actually getting ready to leave there. The place, we close the door, lock the place up. We walk outside. We're outside by my truck talking. And out of nowhere, we see this like weird thing. It's a humanoid figure with wings flying right in front of us, but it was like see-through in a way. But you ever had like that fun house feeling where like, like you're kind of like unbalanced and that's
maybe
the feeling
you're drunk, but not really. You haven't been drinking in days.
Yes.
Yeah.
That same exact feeling. So we're sitting there looking at it and we're literally both just staring at it. I'm like, am I seeing like, what am I seeing? Like, am I seeing like what I think I'm seeing? Like, is it a bug? Is it, well, this thing's probably like maybe this big, I want to say. We're sitting there and out of nowhere, we see it fly directly into a tree behind a common, like behind a tattoo shop. And then it crawls up the tree like a humanoid figure, like just crawling up, goes up to a branch. It pops. Like it's weird even talking about this because it took me about 3 to 4 days to try to realize like what I really saw, like my brain to actually like catch on to what I saw. We see it come up to the branch and it almost like, you ever like go into a swimming pool and jumped off the diving board? Like, you know how you jump, like bounce and then you jump in? Well, it did that with a branch. Like it literally went to the branch and like jumped and then jumped off and flew away. So about 3 days later, I reached out to Sophia, who's the owner of the tattoo shop. I'm like, listen, this might sound crazy that I've tried thinking about this. I said, but I'm just going to tell you, I think you have a fairy in your, like, the back of your property. Like, I have no other explanation. I said, but can you do me a favor? I said, can you go into your camera? She has cameras outside the property. I said, can you go into your camera and play back this time? So I actually wrote down the time that it happened. Play back this time and please tell me you see what I see. Sure enough, she plays the camera back. To us, everything happened in slow motion. But when she played the camera back, it's actually fast. Like it comes up, stands in front of us, and just flies away. And you see this big old, like, looks like a bug type of figure, but it's big enough for the camera to capture it about maybe 100, 110 feet away. Which was interesting. Till this day, like I still have no clue what I saw.
Mm-hmm.
But I had a big possibility thinking that it's definitely definitely what I thought it was, a fairy.
Yeah.
But she actually, a couple days after that, she told me that they were actually planning on taking down that tree that's back there and making an addition to the property. We'll come to find out, like, fairies actually protect the properties.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not commonly
Yeah.
right. So it all just kind of happened in like order. So like after I saw it, she told me the whole like plan she had with building an addition to the property and taking the tree down. And about 3 days later, her mail lady came and said, "Hey, do you know you have fairies on your property?" Like just randomly, without even anybody talking to her.
Yeah.
She's surprising. She was like, "What do you mean?" And apparently, this her mail lady ended up telling her this whole story about fairies in her property and all this other stuff. But it doesn't stop there. It actually gets a little weirder. So the surveyor for that area comes over and she's surveying the back of the property to see if they can make this addition or whatever the case may be. And she tells her, like, "Hey, listen, like, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but I think you have fairies on your property." And she starts telling her the whole story. I'm like, yes, I wasn't the only one that saw it. I'm not going crazy. It was legitimate, like it happened. So like it was cool to have that confirmation like back to
Mm-hmm.
back. And that's exactly like where I drew the line. I'm like, yeah, that can't be real. Like, but then again, like, are ghosts really real? You know what I mean? Like,
It goes with
so
anything.
exactly. So it was just nice having that confirmation, actually, like being able to like say, cool, I think I saw it.
Yeah. 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 Like I'm not just crazy imagining things. The mail lady confirmed it. The surveyor confirmed it. Right.
Yeah, definitely, like
Yeah.
100%, without even knowing about the story, without even knowing, what we had experienced. And one of the things I kept looking at, I'm like, you know what? I wonder, like, I started looking at like different things that were in the area. So at first I thought it might have been, a lunar moth, which
Mm-hmm.
was one of the things that actually kind of matched to what we thought we saw. But just the way we saw it, like, happening in front of us was actually in slow motion. And when she played it back on the video, it was like seconds, like it just,
Yeah.
which was neat. And then we both got to actually see it, like just kind of hovering right in front of us for a little bit and just flew away. And you see like the video comes, stops for like a split second, and then leaves. But there's just no explanation.
Yeah.
None whatsoever.
That's good. I like that story. Good story.
Yeah.
Would you rather be locked in a haunted house for the night or take a midnight stroll through a graveyard?
I locked in the house for the night.
Really?
I don't mind the cemetery, but I want it to be a little more exciting if I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Locked in, like can't leave. Get all these different types of activities. See,
Okay.
I'd say lock in the house better, especially if it's cold out. Like I'd rather be warm.
Okay. I'll take the cold for that one.
Yeah.
um, what is the best ghost movie or show in your opinion?
I was always really a big fan of Destination Fear. I was one of my go-to shows. I mean, they still have Project Fear. I think it's out now on YouTube. But I've always been a fan of that show. Just the simple fact of just taking your fears and actually turning it into equipment for investigating type of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I've always I like that idea because not only does it open your mind, that the whole concept is just pretty cool.
Mhm.
I'd say.
What's your take on Ouija boards? Legit or scam?
So I've never really used them. I stayed away from them just because of
Mhm.
all the stories I've heard. But
Mhm.
it depends how you use it. Just like any other equipment, if you think about it. I mean, a recorder that we use all the time to try to communicate with spirits can be considered a Ouija board if you think about it, because it's technically a communication like object. Um, I'd say, I mean, it could be used as a tool. It's just how you use it and what you're trying to communicate, and just make sure you have the right board. Because from my understanding, every board has a different symbol that can communicate with different things, and it's just a matter of knowing how to close that communication.
I've
But
only used them at sleepovers, so not something I keep around anymore. I think I
did
got
you
my target.
did you have any experience with it? Like, did
No,
anything
I
happen
mean,
when
we
you used
just
it?
like messed around with it. I remember like we would fight over who got to take it home because no one wanted to keep it at their houses. So we'd be like, you have to take it this time. It's like, no, you take it. And it's like, well, I'll just keep it in my car. And I'm like, I don't want to keep that in my car. Because you're just not sure like what's going to come up with it. So
Right.
It's
I've
like,
always heard like these crazy, like just horrible stories. Like, I got rid of the board and it came back to my house. Or, like,
right. Last one. If you could have one supernatural power, what would it be?
I'd say traveling through time.
Yeah.
I'm sure you can probably agree with that one, but
I think mine would actually be to stop time. Like, do you remember on, I think there's an episode of like old Saved by the Bell where they like would move people. They'd be like time out and they would move people to like
yeah,
change the situation. That's what I would like to stop time, to be like, hold on, let me just freeze this moment or freeze this couple of minutes and then like carry on.
yeah. I think there was an old Disney movie, very old, that was like that. It was a stopwatch. They would stop time and do the
Yeah.
same thing, but
Yeah.
they would lose or get older. So like the time would stop, but they would continue to get older, like as time stopped,
Oh,
which
that would
that would
not be
suck.
my affection. I would need to tweak that before I used it.
Yeah, and the mine definitely would be just traveling through time, like being able to visit different time frames and maybe
Yeah.
even different times of your life, and maybe try to like guide yourself to go a
Yeah.
different route.
Very cool. Good answer.
Yeah,
Thanks so much for coming on with us today, Chris. This was really fun.
it
I have
was.
some things I need to go and look up and probably do some deep diving. So I will be in a rabbit hole the rest of my day. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Anytime. Anytime.
I'm also going to check out that app and we'll make sure that we get the link for that in the podcast notes as well. So thanks so much. And we look forward to talking to you again.
Awesome. Thank
All
you. I appreciate it. Thank you guys for having me on, and it's been a blast. So
right.
thank
All right.
you.
Thanks for joining us today for this episode of Hometown Hauntings. Make sure you check us out across all of our social media pages at Ghost City Tours. And any questions, you can drop us a note in the comments section. Thanks so much. And we'll see you next time.
Hometown Hauntings is brought to you by Ghost City Tours, the largest ghost tour company in the nation. With tours in over 20 cities, including New Orleans, Savannah, Charleston, and beyond, we bring haunted history to life with spine-tingling tales and expert storytelling. Ready to experience the paranormal up close? Book now at ghostcitytours.com to explore a haunted city near you.